Earlier this year, I had the pleasure to do a presentation about trustworthy artificial intelligence at an event of the CONMEBOL, which is the South American Football Confederation. Great event. Also, after this, great talks with all the different participants. Besides this different topic, what do I like about international football events? One point is that you see teams from different parts of the world, and you perceive a little bit that the way they are playing football somehow aligns with local cultures. Maybe the most extreme examples, on the one hand, you have this joyful Brazilian way of playing football, jogo bonito. It has to be beautiful and then hopefully also efficient. On the other hand, you have the German way of playing football, efficient but not always joyful. Besides these two extremes, you have a lot of different styles. We see, for example, the British way of playing football, quite hard but always fair, and maybe other teams, not always that 100% fair. But okay, so this is quite interesting. And my question is now for Formula One, does this also apply for the Formula One drivers? For example, does this little guy, little Sebastian Vettel, due to his German heritage, has a different way of driving a Formula One car than this car, Ayrton Senna? So this is a little bit what we want to discuss in this episode of Data-Driven Formula One. So let's start. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on what part of the day you're watching this episode of Data Driven Formula One. My name is Patrick Henz, and today's topic, as you can see, Formula One drivers in heritage, or in other words, the question, does the culture of the country, of the region where you grew up, have an influence on the way you are driving, on the way you are a successful Formula One driver? And this idea had, as I spoke at a football event, as I think in international big events like the World Cup, you can see that the way a team is playing football somehow seems to be aligned with local culture. So that's a little bit the question today. This also is the case for Formula One drivers. So, Formula One drivers and heritage, another episode of Data-Driven Formula One. Just some examples which I listed here. The Argentinian Juan Manuel Fangio, often called El Maestro, displayed a resilient and improvisational style shaped by long, green endurance races across Argentina's rough landscapes, which bred adaptability and calm under pressure, traits Argentine motorsport culture often celebrates, up to today, I think. Then, in opposite to Argentina, Ayrton Senna from neighboring Brazil, he was renowned for his intensity, emotional approach, and commitment to spiritual and heroic narrative of Brazilian identity, often racing with the heart and aggression. So I had the pleasure to visit both countries, Argentina and also Brazil. So what you see here related Senna. Yes, of course. Latin American countries are, of course, very diverse, but I think what they unites is the emotion, especially related to their culture, country, etc. So I think emotion is a factor which we have in all Latin drivers. Also, commitment and this, of course, extreme case, Ayrton Senna, also Juan Manuel Fangio. Sometimes, yes, we have this 100% commitment in the very successful drivers. But if we see other drivers, also Latin drivers, maybe sometimes this last step had been missing, but I think this does not really is aligned to culture. The same I could say also about European drivers, for example. Yes, spiritual, we still have a high importance of religion in Latin America. You see the drivers sometimes praying before the race, like Senna did. You see this the same with the football squads. And of course, related to religion and also related to this emotion. Of course, we always have a heroic narrative of Brazilian identity, as we especially saw with Ayrton Senna. But to be fair, I think with other Brazilian drivers, it was not that much. So if we see Nelson Piquet, Massa, etc., we don't have this big hero historic than we had with Senna or Fangio. And a little bit less, we have this, of course, also with European drivers. We have this with Michael Schumacher, and of course, with British driver getting the title of a knight like Sir Lewis Hamilton, even though I think this heroic narrative we see more in Latin America than, for example, in Asia or Europe. Already speaking about Lewis Hamilton, he exhibits adaptability, calculated aggression, and a polished media presence, mirroring both British sport traditions and the multicultural, globalized nature of modern Britain. And here, a calculated aggression. So this is maybe a little bit more head over heart, the difference between European and Latin drivers. Of course, this aligns also with the cliches and is not always true, but maybe a general tendency more brain using the brain than the heart. We could see this not always an advantage. So it can be advantage, it can be a disadvantage, as of course the heart brings sometimes the the part what is missing to become an exceptional driver and not only being a good driver. And again, this is maybe some general tendency, but not always the case. For example, Nigel Mansell here, I think, mostly won the heart over the brain for the good and the bad. I mean, he lost races because of this, but he also won a championship, including that factor. Alan Prost optimized le professeur, cerebral, methodical, and strategic traits often attributed to French intellectual style. And again, that's a tendency. Yes, I would align again as French drivers also had been more intellectual than emotionally powered, if I remember it right. So something I may confirm this. And Michael Schumacher, also already spoken about, he's been a disciplined, relentless pursuit of perfection and efficiency aligns with German culture's values of order and technical excellence. Yeah, yes, I would also agree with this. Of course, Michael Schumacher was the most perfect example for this definition. Other German drivers may have the same tendency, but not as much as Michael Schumacher. But of course, discipline is a part traditionally of German culture. And also, we have in Germany, for example, all the manufacturing of luxury cars, sports cars. So I wouldn't say it's in the blood of a German driver, but of course, you are more exposed to this culture. Speaking a bit about globalization and unique personalities. While cultural influences exist, Formula One's global nature means drivers frequently develop cosmopolitan outlooks. For example, a lot of them live now in Monaco for tax reason or in Switzerland, influenced as much by team environments, personal mentors, and circuit experiences as by their nationality. For instance, Finnish drivers like Mika Häkkinen and Kimi Räikkönen are famous for their reserved, stoic high school approach, of course, brought to perfection by Kimi Räikkönen. I'm sure it is his character, but up to a certain point, of course, he enjoyed playing with this image too. Traits often linked with Finnish culture stereotypes, but also develop throughout the unique pressures of Formula One. Yep, and I think honestly, I never had been to Scandinavia, but having this stoic part in you, of course, helps to perform under pressure. So here we have maybe an advantage of Scandinavian drivers, and we had numerous drivers from Scandinavia, consideration that the population in these countries is not very high. We are data-driven Formula One, so here is an overview about data, driver styles, and cultures. On the left, we have some examples of drivers. For example, starting at the beginning, Juan Manuel Fangio, Argentina, perceived style, adaptive, calm, enduring, culture reflection, rural grit, and improvisation. Improvisation in general is part of Latin culture, from Mexico in the north up to Argentina, Chile in the extreme south, due to, on the other hand, on the lack of perfect infrastructures, processes, you have to be very improvisative and of course, in motorsports, where we are at the extreme, meaning we have everything, machine, processes defined until the smallest details, but nevertheless, to accidents, etc., technical failures, there is never everything working 100% perfectly, so improvisation is an advantage. Ayrton Senna, the Brazilian, passionate, spiritual, aggressive. In general, if we compare Brazil and Argentina, I personally perceive Argentinian culture a little bit more European, more related to Italy, while Brazil is, from my perception, again, and of course, Brazil is nearly a continent, so there's there are big difference from north to south, west and east. But in general, I would say Brazilians I perceive more passionate and also more religious than Argentinian. So his cultural reflection, emotional, heroic, dramatic, yes, that too. We see this with Brazilian football players sometimes after a foul, but also we saw, of course, Ayrton Senna and other Brazilian drivers showing more emotions up to being dramatic in some situations. Alain Prost, the French, le professeur, methodical, strategic, i- cultural reflection, intellectual, as we know, a lot of French philosophers, science, technology, and calculated. The German, Michael Schumacher, relentless, structured, and this relates to German culture slash cliché, discipline, efficiency. Raikkonen, Kimi, the Finnish driver, cool, unflappable Finnish Sisu, uh, reserved, Lewis Hamilton from the UK, edited, polished the hybrid of the British and the global values. And here we see, of course, already the effect of globalization. I mean, Lewis Hamilton, a modern driver, where we live now in a more globalized world, independent if Latin America or Europe in this case, cultures are more mixing up in um, difference to earlier decades, Fancho, Senna, and Prost, and even Michael Schumacher. Actual champion Max Verstappen from the Netherlands, living at the border to the Netherlands, of course, a country I know. Perceived style, bold, relentless, Dutch directness, but very personal. And yes, if I would compare Dutch people to French or Germans, yes, they are normally very direct. So you have a more direct dialogues, but they do not take this personal as much as in other cultures. British drivers, in general, known for adaptable, smooth, and calculated approaches, often excelling in variable weather conditions. Yeah, of course, if you know the weather on the island. Emphasizing tire management and technique over aggression. So you have here the typical British gentleman showing less emotions than people from other regions. Two examples. Lewis Hamilton, he mixes karting-inspired late braking with smoothness, strong in wet and street circuits, and adaptable across car areas. Another one, Lando Norris, precision over aggression, methodical in tire preserving, yet increasingly assertive in wheel-to-wheel racing. Some German drivers, renowned for technical discipline and the relentless pursuit of optimal lap times, often blending aggression with efficiency. So let's say a calculated aggression. Michael Schumacher and this one, Sebastian Vettel, precise, methodical with an engineering mindset for extracting repeatable performance, something which you learn in German schools, universities, and yes, I would say this is a part of German culture fostered by education. I mean, the education, with this mean I'm not the quality of the education, but topics you learn in school by your parents or also at the university. Some Finnish drivers, stereotypically ice cool and consistent, prized for their ability to withstand pressure and maintain focus, reflecting what we call in Finland sisu, meaning grit and resolve. Two examples, Kimi Raikkonen and Valtteri Bottas, calm under fire, smooth car control and effective in challenging conditions, especially on low grip tracks. Of course, quite understandable if you know the weather in Scandinavia, especially in winter. In comparison to this, Latin American drivers, often linked to flair and boldness, notable for improvisational moves and high commitment overtakes, so sometimes hard over brain, also in overtaking, being a very optimist. And this is maybe another relation to culture. If I see the region, Mexico, Colombia, Venezuela, Peru, Paraguay, Uruguay, Argentina, Brazil, and all the other countries I just not mentioned, people are tendency more happy, more optimist than in the other continents. I know, and I must say I don't know all continents, so never have been to Africa, never have been to Australia, but due to my perception, Latin people are often more optimist, inclusive, more happy than people in North America or Europe or Asia. Two examples also here, Sergio Perez, which we hopefully see next year, 2026, again on the racetrack. He demonstrates aggression during overtakes, sometimes using tire-saving strategy, and Ayrton Senna, whom we already talked about, optimized an emotionally charged, persistent approach with daring maneuvers. I called them Latin European drivers, including the countries where we have a Latin language. Starting with Spain, example Fernando Alonso. He is tactical, experience, and crafty, reading races dynamically to seize opportunities. Something which you may say also about the Spanish football national team. French drivers like Pierre Gasly, Esteban Ocon, adaptive style, balancing aggression and technical precision. And Italian, here the actual example, Kimi Antonelli, smooth, technically disciplined, rising talent, focus on consistency and calculated aggression under pressure. Dutch drivers, we don't have many examples. Two are the Verstappen family, Jos, and of course now Max. Aggressive, instinctive, and relentless, known for his direct attacks, like we have a more direct culture in the Netherlands in general. Robust, defending, and rapid adaptability, setting a trend for younger drivers in the grid, regardless of nationality. So far, our deep dive about the relation, culture, heritage, and driving style. For me, what is my conclusion? Yes, but meaning I can see some some relations to cultural heritage uh, related drivers. On the other hand, sometimes it's of course a little bit the cliches which you may see, which you may perceive, and these are some example. Other drivers from the same regions can be completely different, and I think these differences go away due to globalization and also due to the professionalism of Formula One in general, where you get coach, where you have your coach, where you are in, you're part of a international diverse team, as all the big race teams are today. We don't have these British or Italian garage teams like still in the 1980s, which are also still like national teams. Today's Formula One teams are international, highly diverse, and also as families get more diverse, I think these big differences, which we saw, which maybe we can see until Michael Schumacher, are getting less and less as Lewis Hamilton, Sir Lewis Hamilton of course, grew up in a more diverse environment, and also from his family background is more diverse. And today's drivers, like Max Verstappen, grew up in a globalized world, part of a international environment. So even if, speaking about Max, I see the relation to Dutch culture, the way he acts, the way he drives, but of course this gets less and less. Okay, that's really my conclusion, and I may be biased, and you may have a different perception. If you have so, please comment. Hope you liked this episode. If so, please give it a like, follow us. The videos you can see YouTube Music, and Spotify. On all other podcast catchers, you get the audio only version. If you're into music, have a look on Spotify, as we have here the data-driven Formula One mixtape, where you find music directly inspired by the sport, by drivers. Hope you like it, and see you next time. Bye bye.